Hello and welcome to Bourbon Rocks. Tonight we're going to review Colonel E.H. Taylor Single Barrel Bottled in Bond. Now Taylor is from Buffalo Trace's mash bill number 1, which is the low rye mash bill, approximately 10 to 12% rye. It's not actually stated, but that's what most people tend to believe. But it's their low rye mash bill. All of the E.H. Taylor expressions are bottled in bond, with the exception of the barrel proof, which obviously cannot be, and the rye barrel proof, which is a new expression, which may be a one-off, we'll have to see. But all of the rest of the expressions are bottled in bond. This is the single barrel, and we've before done the barrel proof, which is obviously not bottled in bond. We've done the 4 grain, which is bottled in bond, but this is their single barrel. This is more accessible. What we're trying to do now on Bourbon Rocks is to actually give you some bourbons that are more accessible. Initially, we did start out with some very, high-end, expensive bourbons that are hard to find and cost a lot. But these are now bourbons that are a little more easy to acquire and don't cost as much. Of course, it's still Buffalo Trace, so you're still going to have the Buffalo Trace hype, and it's still going to be allocated, and it's still going to be a little bit hard to find. But these will pop up on the store a lot more frequently than some of the other things that we've done. But anyway, so this is the single barrel of E.H. Taylor, Colonel E.H. Taylor. He was a Kentucky colonel. He was the founder of the distillery, which is currently Buffalo Trace. Although I do believe that they were actually distilling bourbons there even before Taylor came on the scene, but he started the old Fire Copper distillery, which is since became the Stag Distillery, which then in turn became Buffalo Trace, which is now owned by Sazerac. We have our E.H. Taylor Glencairn glass here. Okay, so we're going to start out, of course, by looking at the color, and this is a very pretty, almost a golden sunset. I can imagine the sunset over the Currituck Sound if you're on the Outer Banks, and you look out as the sun goes down, and you got that nice golden sunset color, beautiful orange. You look at the body. And it's about a medium to full body, not quite as thick as the barrel proof or the 4 grain, but pretty medium to full body. And on the nose, again, keep the mouth open, bring that air in from both your nose and your mouth. And I get that butterscotch that tends to run in the Taylor line, I find. Brown sugar, some caramel, sugar cookies, ginger, and allspice. That's where I think the spice lies in this. It's gingery. Maybe a ginger cookie. Not that sweet, a little sweet, but more spicy. And not all that fruity really on the nose. More of that ginger and butterscotch and maybe a ginger cookie. So we'll go to the palate. And it's peppery. You get hit with that spice right away. I want a peppery spice. Again, their ginger's still there, gingerbread, definitely some gingerbread there. A little bit of age, a little bit, so I didn't actually, so obviously, I always do this. I've recently forgotten to tell you guys about the proof is obviously 100 proof because it's bottled in bond, but the age on this. So this is another non-age stated bourbon. I usually tell you this at the beginning of the video, but the last couple of videos I've forgotten that. So these are unedited videos. They're done in one take, so if I make a mistake, obviously I just go back and correct myself. I have not edited these, so I'm not reading off of cue cards or a teleprompter or anything like that. So it's 100 proof because it's bottled in bond, so it has to be 100 proof. And even though it's non-age stated, it's thought that the single barrel is somewhere between 7 and 12, usually about 10 years. So we're going to guess this is around a 10-year bourbon. That's a bit older than the small batch and the barrel proof, which tend to run in the 6 to 8 year range. And the 4-grain that we did was actually stated as 12, not on the bottle, but on the press release was stated as 12 years. But this is estimated between 7 and 12, and we'll say around 10 is what most people believe. So we're going to call this a 10-year bourbon, although it is non-age stated, and it is 100 proof because it's bottled in bond. So back to my palate. Sorry about that. So it's peppery. There is some of the age in that tobacco. It does come out of it with some of that age, but definitely the ginger is still there. Butterscotch is faded a little bit. There's a little more honey, I think, on the palate, but I definitely get that ginger. Trying to see what kind of fruits that I can pull from it. I don't think this is an exceptionally fruity bourbon at all. I do think it's definitely more spicy. It's sweeter on the palate than it was on the nose. If there's fruits, it's kind of in the way of maybe some dried fruits, a little fig, a little apricot, maybe some dates, some of those dried fruits. But definitely honey and ginger, allspice, maybe a little orange zest. It's a little bit, but definitely peppery and gingery. The finish is long and warm, very warm, very spicy and sweet. Now are kind of co-mingling at the end in that finish. So it starts out, a little bit buttery and butterscotchy, brown sugar, sugar cookie, gingery, allspice in the nose. It does get a little hotter in the palate with a sort of peppery spice, some of the age from the tobacco. Gingerbread for sure, a tiny bit of fruit, not a lot of fruit, more spice and a little bit of sweetness too. And you get to the finish, and again, it's very long and warm, and you pull together a lot of that sweetness and that spice. Still not a very fruity bourbon at all. The weeded bourbons I find, like the Wellers and the Pappies, tend to be a lot fruitier. The rye bourbons are definitely a little more spicier, but it's it's long. It's definitely long, and it carries it's definitely a fair amount of spice in it. But I do think it's a little short on the fruitiness. I'm going to give it a queen. It certainly doesn't rise to the level of the barrel proof, which I think has a lot more going for it because of its proof. I mean, that was a hot, very, very hot bourbon. I think it came in 131 proof or so, but it carried so much flavor from the barrel with that extra proof. This one's a bit older, but it just doesn't, it seems to be just a little bit weaker on the flavors. The spice is definitely there, a little bit of sweetness, but not a lot of fruit. So again, I'll call it a queen. It's a good bourbon. It's certainly something that you can drink anytime. Is it a daily drinker? Yes, if you can acquire it, much like most Buffalo Trace products these days. They're very allocated, so they're hard to find. But this one is a lot more accessible, obviously, because they do put it out several times per year. So you won't, find it in the stores if you happen to be there when they're opening a box, or if you have a drop or an allocation, in your whatever state you live in. You can get this. This is not necessarily hard to acquire, and even if you buy it on the internet, you're going to pay a little bit more, obviously, because it's Buffalo Trace, but it's still going to be affordable. So I would say it can be a daily drinker if you can get it. So that's E.H. Taylor Single Barrel, and check us out on bourbonrocks.com or on YouTube at Bourbon Rocks. Well, you're already there if you're watching the video. Thank you.